Hello everyone and welcome. So it's time to pick the giveaway winners. Details at the end. We have a lot of rumors concerning the Nintendo Switch Pro or Nintendo Switch 2 and its power, performance, and specs. Breath of the Wild 2 at 4K. Yes, we're going to get into that. Watch this entire video, especially towards the end. And if you still don't agree, please comment below and let me know why. Yes, we all know of the rumors. The screen can be upgraded to 1080p or be 7 inches or bigger, and the design and overall size of the Switch or Joy-Cons wouldn't need to change at all. But I want to talk about something much more interesting. Really quickly, why do we think it's coming? It's as if history is repeating itself, because not only did rumors or leaks very similar to these come from the same people before the Switch Lite was officially announced, but the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X also had similar leaks from the same people. What happened in all of those scenarios? Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox all repeatedly denied the rumors, stating they weren't true and they wouldn't be releasing a second version or half-gen console. Months later, each of those companies came out and officially announced those rumored and leaked consoles. How powerful is the Switch Pro going to be? Nintendo would never release a console capable of 4K. These are the same questions everyone's been asking or statements everyone's been making. To answer this as simply as possible, yes, Nintendo could easily release a cheap console that would be more than capable of native 4K games. Third-party games like The Witcher 3, Doom, and others would likely be running somewhere between 1440p and 4K. The new, just released Xbox Series S, which a lot of people believe is equivalent to an Xbox One X, is only $300, the exact same price as the Nintendo Switch, and the Xbox Series S or Xbox One X is already more than capable of playing a lot of games at native 4K. However, most demanding games are running somewhere between 1440p and 4K. On top of this, keep in mind, Nintendo's games aren't nearly as demanding as normal PlayStation 4 or Xbox One games. So taking a Nintendo game running at 1080p or even 900p and rendering it in full 4K would take a lot less power than taking a base PS4 or Xbox One game running around 1080p and rendering it in 4K, meaning with a lot less power required, a much cheaper processor could be used. Why do we think the next Nintendo Switch will be this powerful? Yes, this is what all the rumors are currently saying and have been saying, but let's take a look at something to back all of this up. Some people may be upset by this statement, but I'm not hating on Nintendo or the Switch. I absolutely love Nintendo and the Switch. Obviously, my channel is all about Nintendo, Zelda, so don't think I'm just hating on the Switch. Now, with the Nintendo Switch, when it first launched, almost everyone looked at it as a really powerful handheld console. This actually couldn't have been further from the truth. At the same time the Switch released, compared to gaming tablets or other mobile processors, the Switch was basically just an average handheld console. In fact, the same processor was already being used by Nvidia for a while before the Switch was released in their Nvidia Shield, and that same processor was running even faster than Nintendo had it in the Switch. For whatever reason, the Switch was basically just an average handheld console. It was the only dedicated handheld console at the time, and most people didn't think to dive in and compare the specs, and most people honestly just didn't even care. Playing Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, Super Mario Odyssey, or whatever new Nintendo game was coming out in HD on the go and on the TV was more than enough to keep everyone happy. Even today, you can get plenty of mobile processors that are similar to or even more powerful than the PlayStation 4 and even the PS4 Pro. Now, it's easier if we use PlayStation consoles for this example, as they're easier to follow along with, thanks to the naming being simple and mostly just numbered. However, we will also do Nintendo handheld console comparisons after this, to even further strengthen the point. So don't think Nintendo's pattern isn't the same, because it literally is. One thing to remember, almost every handheld console has fallen between the last generation and new generation of home consoles. The PSP was released after the PS2 and was between the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 in terms of power and performance. Their next handheld was the PlayStation Vita, released after the PlayStation 3 and was between the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 in power. if PlayStation would have continued with a third handheld, the PSP 3 or Vita 2, whatever it would have been called, would have came after the PlayStation 4 and been between the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 in terms of power, which would put the Vita 2 around the same power or even more powerful than the Nintendo Switch, but releasing 2 or more years before the Switch. Yes, PlayStation would have had a handheld that would have been substantially more powerful than Nintendo's actual home console. Some people may think PlayStation couldn't put out a handheld console more powerful than someone's home console, but they actually did this, with the Vita being an HD handheld only console that was more powerful than Nintendo's own Wii, which wasn't capable of HD. And it wasn't too far behind the Wii U either. Now, with Nintendo, we'll go through this a bit quicker. The Game Boy or Game Boy Color was about even in certain situations as the NES. The Game Boy Advance was a 32-bit system and between the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 in terms of power, having several Super Nintendo games ported to and enhanced for the Game Boy Advance. The DS and all of its models had somewhat enhanced ports of Nintendo 64 games. Super Mario 64 DS with additional features like multiplayer and even improving a tremendous amount on the textures. This became really noticeable for Nintendo with the 3DS and new 3DS though, following the same pattern of being between the old and next-gen console. Famously, the 3DS and new 3DS not only had enhanced GameCube ports like Luigi's Mansion or Wii ports like Xenoblade Chronicles and Donkey Kong Country Returns, even Wii U and Switch games were playable on the 3DS, though they were heavily downscaled, such as Fire Emblem Warriors on Switch, Hyrule Warriors on Wii U and Switch, and Yoshi's Woolly World, which was on Wii U. So after the Wii U launched, if Nintendo would have kept this pattern, they would have oddly enough had a handheld system like the Switch, but 2 years or more before the Switch, and at a time where their own handheld console would have been more powerful than their own home console, the Wii U, which puts them in the same situation that PlayStation would have been, as well as other tablets and average mobile processors at that time. If this pattern with PlayStation or Nintendo's handhelds were to continue to this current generation, the handheld consoles should be somewhere between the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which puts it around the same power and performance as the Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro, which, as we stated earlier, is basically where average gaming tablets and other mobile gaming processors are now and have been at for at least a couple of years. So not only does this pattern of handheld consoles fit perfectly, but this also happens to be where the average mobile processors are at as well. No, this wouldn't be insanely expensive, so get that out of your head if you're thinking that. As we said earlier, the Xbox Series S, which is technically a new generation console, but in terms of raw power falls between the old and new generation. It's only $300, and also happens to be the exact same price as the current Switch. What about the price of the Switch Pro? Well, Nintendo is actually making an unbelievable amount of profit from the Switch selling at $300, much more than any other console selling at the current moment. The Switch Lite selling at $200, which is honestly basically the same hardware with a very slightly smaller screen, is also making a lot of profit. Looking at these two price points, it gives the odd impression that the Switch dock would be somewhere between $70 to $100, making up most of the difference between the Switch Lite and normal Switch. However, it's using less than $5 to $10 worth of parts, which is why you see so many super cheap third-party docks available. So Nintendo could easily sell a Switch Pro or Switch 2 with a processor around the same power as a PlayStation 4 inside the actual console for the same price of $300 and still make a great profit. However, I could also see it being $350, which is still a lot cheaper than other current consoles. Plus, you have the added ability to play on TV and on the go. It's also possible that Nintendo will do as most fans suggest and keep a similar processor inside the Switch Pro, just making the screen larger and placing the more powerful hardware inside the dock. However, I don't quite think so, and I'll get to why just after this. GPUs that are equal to the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X can easily be found for less than $80. which is all the dock would need. Other than the less than $5 worth of parts already in the current dock, this is the same setup that a lot of people are using to game on their laptops, connecting their cheap laptop to a gaming dock that only has a GPU. With the actual console, Nintendo could keep the current processor and allow it to play with the performance the current Switch has when docked. And this wouldn't run battery time down as much as you would imagine. You can currently mod and hack your current Switch to do this, even overclock it to be even more powerful, similar to the new 3DS compared to the regular 3DS. And in handheld mode, it will be a good bit more powerful than a normal docked Switch, and you still get plenty of time from your battery life, especially if you have the new Switch revision or Switch Lite. To make this even better, using the example of playing Breath of the Wild, a very intensive Switch game that pushes the Switch to its limits, at a lot of points in the game requiring the frame rate to drop to the low teens, if not single digits, as well as taking the dynamic resolution from 900p down to almost 720p because it's just pushing the hardware inside the Switch that much. Look at this massive upgrade in battery life the new Switch revision that came out alongside the Switch Lite has, which lasts almost twice as long. That is almost double the battery life in less than 2 years. When the next Switch comes, it will be another 2 or 3 years from the launch of those consoles, which would allow for an even larger boost, possibly even being doubled once again. So with this new battery, the Switch Pro would last 7 to 10 hours. And if it had the docked mode unlocked while in handheld, or even an altogether brand new processor that's just similar in power, but more battery efficient, it would last as long, if not longer, than the normal Nintendo Switch, despite running 2 or 3 times the processing power. So yes, it is very possible and very likely the Nintendo Switch Pro or Nintendo Switch 2 could be somewhere between the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 in terms of power and performance, have a better battery life that lasts similar in length to the current Nintendo Switch, if not longer, and run even cooler than the original Switch, all for around $300 or $350. Depending on what Nintendo would think is their best option. You may think, wouldn't it be more expensive for Nintendo to use a mobile version of a processor that is more powerful and put it into the Switch, instead of getting a normal processor inside the dock? The answer is no. You see, if they did it the other way and put a cheaper but normal processor inside the dock, that extra money that would have been spent buying a mobile processor of similar performance to the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 Pro would end up being spent on the second processor that still needs to be inside the actual Switch console. Honestly, it would probably be cheaper not only to just mass purchase a single processor for the main console, but it would also save time and money in the production process, as well as save even more money in the long run. With 2 processors, you have twice as many, if not more, secondary parts that also need to be bought, as well as the extra time it takes to put all of those extra parts together on the assembly line. You have 2 or 3 times as many secondary parts, like screws, bolts, fans, coolers, and everything else, not only requiring making the production more expensive and taking longer, but it gives the console even more of a chance for something to fail and not work. Think about all of the red rings of death with the Xbox 360, or blinking light of death for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, even the new consoles, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, and all the Nintendo Switches that have stopped working due to something going wrong with the processor. Now, suddenly you have 2 completely different processing units, and now it's twice as likely for something to stop working. Nintendo wouldn't want to spend all of that extra money for those who are lucky enough to actually have a warranty. They already lost millions and millions in lawsuits because of a simple Joy-Con drift. Now, giveaway winner time. Remember, we will still be giving away $60 eShop cards when we reach 97,000, 98,000, 99,000 subscribers, and the big Nintendo Switch, Skyward Sword, and Joy-Con, or a $200 eShop card giveaway for reaching 100,000 subscribers. Don't think that's it though. We have 2 or 3 other giveaways right now. We gave away the first bonus eShop card to the live chat on the last 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast episode. We will be giving away another bonus eShop card on the next episode of the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast for those who are subscribed or a member of our Discord. After we reach 100,000 subscribers, we won't be ending the giveaways. Instead of $60, we will be giving away $100 eShop cards for every 10,000 new subscribers. And we are thinking about doing $50 eShop cards for every 5,000 subscribers. So for example, we would give away $50 at 105,000 subscribers, $100 at 110,000 subscribers, $50 again at 115,000 subscribers, and repeating, with bigger giveaways for reaching special milestones, like 125,000 or 150,000 subscribers. Maybe more Nintendo Switches or whatever new consoles Nintendo has at the time. Or to make it easier for everyone, just sending the money through PayPal to be used on whatever you would like. With all of that out of the way, the winner of the $60 eShop card for us reaching the 96,000 subscribers goal is Linked Shipped, which almost made me say a bad word, who says, "Best Zelda channel ever. I fall asleep to your videos." Well, thank you. We actually hear that quite a bit, that people enjoy listening to our different voices, and even fall asleep listening to our Zelda theories, top 10 videos, or other playlists, especially our Zelda podcast, the 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast. We also had a bonus winner on the last 𝐈𝐧𝐬𝐭𝐽𝐠cast episode, selected from the live chat by Daniel, Jorge. And no, despite the last winner and the new winner both leaving really positive comments, that is not why they were picked at all. I use a program that picks at random. It's just you are all so amazing, and so many of you just happen to leave so many positive comments. It would be rare if we picked one that wasn't positive, which we got a lot of even before we started this big giveaway. So again, thank you all for being so amazing and awesome. Have a great day.